I've heard that this tomb was discovered while this road was under construction. And the tomb is carved into the hillside. There are several spaces inside in which to lay family members to rest. And the heavy stone here would have been rolled over the opening in order to keep animals out. And this tomb gives a sense of what the tomb would have been like in which Jesus was buried. It, too, was a tomb carved into a hillside that had a large stone that was rolled over the door. But it gives a sense not only of the tomb in which Jesus was buried, but the tomb in which he came back to life, the resurrection, which Christians around the world celebrate every Easter. But the implications of Jesus' resurrection are huge for believers. You see, through our ancestor Adam, a sin sweeps through the world, and sin always carries death in its wake. The Apostle Paul, in writing to the Jesus community in Corinth, in southern Greece, he would word it this way: "For as in Adam all die." But then he offers these promising words, "But in Christ all are made alive." It's like through Adam, death spreads. Through Christ, life spreads. And so today, we have the wonderful opportunity to talk about Jesus as the second Adam.
All right, how's everybody doing? Man, it is good to see you. You're doing really well. I like that. I want to say hello also to those of you joining us from our campuses, as well as Ada Bible Church online. If we haven't met, my name's Aaron. I'm Director of Student Ministries here and also one of the teaching pastors. And man, I'm just so glad we get to hang out today and continue this series, Doubter's Guide to Jesus, with a conversation about Jesus as Adam. And so as we get going, I want to introduce you to some people that are very important and dear to my heart. These are my siblings. So right here, this is the baby of the family. His name is Andrew, and you can't really tell from the picture, but he's a very strong dude, okay? So his biceps, if you can even imagine this, probably about 4 times bigger than mine. So I know it's hard to imagine, bigger than this, but he has them, okay? So my little brother Andrew's like 12 years behind me. He's married, has a little girl who is very tight with one of my little girls. And Andrew's a musician. He's a great guitar player and a bass player. And he is the good son. And what I mean by that is he works in the family business. So my family has a water well drilling business in Caledonia. And no joke, 5th generation water well driller, this guy, Andrew. It's funny, I'm the pastor in the family, but I'm like the black sheep. So yeah, I don't know how this happened, but that's kind of where we're at. And so next up in the birth order is my sister, Rochelle. And she's definitely the funniest person in the family, probably funniest person in Grand Rapids, in my opinion. And she's also an incredible servant. She is a special education teacher here in the area and just does amazing work with the kids in her classroom. Also married and has 2 boys. And then next up is Stephanie. She is the sibling that moved away. Does anybody else have one of these? Yeah, just as far as you can get, I think. She moved to Portland, Oregon, and she's doing her part to go ahead and keep Portland weird. And I mean that with all respect. So Stephanie is an artist, and that is her job. She paints, she draws, she has her stuff in galleries all over the place, LA, Portland, New York. I mean, she really is a fantastic artist. And how about this for a charmed life? Her job is painting and drawing, and on the weekends, she climbs mountains with her friends. I mean, so it's like every weekend there'll be a picture on Instagram of her and her friends on top of Mount Hood or Mount Rainier or some other crazy place. But that's my sister Stephanie, and then of course there's me, I'm the oldest. But something that I need to tell you about this picture is this picture is actually incomplete. You see, there's somebody missing from this picture, and that is a sister that falls between Stephanie and myself. Her name is Kara, And when she was 1 month old, my parents put her to sleep and she never woke up. And so my siblings and I, as much as I love this picture, when I look at it, I think it's incomplete. There's somebody missing. And when I think about Kara and her short life, I just have this sense that she got ripped off and that we got ripped off because she never got to grow up. She never got to discover her passions. She never got to discover her dreams. She never got to fall in love, have a career, have children. And I just think that she got ripped off and we got ripped off because I would have loved to have another sister and just experience the person that she grew to become. And something that I know is true is that I'm not the only one with an incomplete picture. And I'm sure that when you look at your life, there are people missing, somebody that you lost, family member, mentor, friend. And maybe it's not somebody that died, but somebody that literally left your picture. And you know, sometimes it's not somebody that we lost, but just somebody that's missing that we wish was in the picture. I just know of that some of you desperately want a child. And just, it's not happening. And others of us just really desire to have someone to journey through life with. Husband, a wife, and just not happening. And sometimes it's not someone that's missing from the picture, but as we look at the picture of our lives, we just feel like something is missing. Just something about us just feels off, feels wrong, feels like something's missing. And maybe you're going through a season where a career has been lost, a home that you loved has been lost, a dream that you have just is not happening. But one thing I know is that you understand what it's like to have an incomplete picture. And I understand what it's like to have an incomplete picture. And the family that we're going to be spending time with today, the story that we're going to be looking at in the Bible, let me just introduce you to this family. We have here Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. And we're going to be spending time with them today, and their story can be found in the Gospel of John. And so if you're new to the Bible, John was one of Jesus' disciples. He walked with Jesus for like 3 years. And then later in life, he wrote an account of Jesus' life and ministry, and we call it the Gospel of John, and it's part of our Bible. It's in the New Testament. And John records for us in chapter 11 of his gospel the story of this family. And a couple things you need to know about this family. Number one, they're from a town here called Bethany, which is in Israel, very close to Jerusalem. And secondly, this family is very close with Jesus. They're good friends with Jesus, and they've been deeply impacted by the ministry of Jesus. This Mary that's part of this family, she is the one who showed up at a dinner party and broke this expensive bottle of perfume, poured it on Jesus' feet, and then wiped his feet with her hair and with her tears. She and this family have been deeply impacted by the ministry of Jesus. And something else you need to know about this family is that they are entering into a crisis. Because one of them, Lazarus, has become sick. And so this is how this story begins. The sisters sent word to Jesus, Lord, the one you love is sick. The one that you care about so much, the one that you're very close with, Lazarus, is sick. And by sick, it's like deathbed sick. And so going back to this picture of this family, this picture is about to become incomplete. They too are about to suffer a loss. And so a question that comes up is just, why? You know? Like, why? Why sadness? Why disappointment? Why grief? Why death. Why do these things even exist? Why is it that we have incomplete pictures in life? And to answer that question, we have to go all the way back to the beginning, to the very first book of the Bible, the book of Genesis, where we read about the very first humans. You see, God created Adam and he created Eve and he put them in a garden. And in that garden, there were two very special trees. There was the tree of life, which symbolized that Adam and Eve were intended to live forever in perfect harmony with each other, perfect harmony with creation, and perfect harmony with God. That's what this tree of life is all about. And then a second special tree was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And around that tree, God gave his one and only boundary. And the book of Genesis records for us this boundary. But you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for when you eat from it, you will certainly die. And of course, you probably know the story. Adam and Eve decide, you know what, God, we think you're holding out on us. We don't trust you, and they decide to eat from the tree. And that one decision has led to all the disappointment, all the pain, all the suffering, and even death that we experience in this life. It is all because of that decision. It's something that we sometimes call the curse, the effects of Adam's decision. You see, we live in what I'm gonna call today the old world of Adam, with its sadness, with its disappointment, and with its grief, and with its death. We know what it's like to live in the old world of Adam. And this family that we're gonna be spending time with today, they are about to feel what it's like to live in Adam's old world. But there's something you might notice about this picture. There's a guy with a glowing head in it. That is Jesus. And I don't know when artists decided to put glowing heads around Jesus, but that's what they did in the medieval. How do we show everybody that Jesus is divine? Put a sun around his head. All right, good plan. But this is Jesus. And something that we learn about Jesus in the New Testament is that Jesus is described as the second Adam, or the new Adam. You see, the new Adam, Jesus, his new world is breaking into the old world of Adam. And so the new Adam, Jesus, he is part of this story, and his role as the new Adam is gonna have an impact on their experience. Jesus has something to say about sadness, disappointment, and grief. And here's why this is so important for us. Jesus is part of their incomplete picture. He's part of my incomplete picture, and I believe that he desires to have a role in your incomplete picture. And here's my prayer for our time together, that if you find yourself in a place where you're journeying through a difficult season where you would say, yeah, I'm experiencing an incomplete picture, a season of disappointment, sadness, or grief, my prayer is that you would come to understand what it means that Jesus is the second Adam. Because when we do, I'm telling you, it changes everything about our experience with disappointment, sadness, and grief. It revolutionizes our experience. And if I could pray one thing for you, it's that you would discover in Jesus' role as the second Adam, that you would discover hope. That you would experience hope this morning in your struggle. And so just to let you know kind of how we're gonna be spending the rest of our time together, we're gonna be talking about three conversations or three implications, let's say that, implications of Jesus as the second Adam. So the story that we've been introduced to already of Mary and Martha and Lazarus, they've sent word to Jesus, hey, Lazarus, the one you care so deeply about, he's very sick. And I think they wanted to let Jesus know because Jesus cares about them. But I think there's something else. I believe that they are letting Jesus know because they want him to come and heal Lazarus. Because Jesus is known as a healer. In fact, already 3 times, if my math is right, in the Gospel of John, he has healed perfect strangers. He's healed a blind man, a crippled man, and a sick boy. And I believe these 2 sisters are thinking, if Jesus is willing and able to heal perfect strangers, then of course, surely he will come and heal our brother who he cares about so deeply. And so they send the message to Jesus. Jesus gets the message, and now we get to see his response. Now, Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So, as in therefore, when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he what? Stayed where he was 2 more days. Is it just me, or does this not make any sense? It's like, okay, so he loves them, therefore he does nothing. What I expect to read is he doesn't care that much about them, therefore he does nothing. Or he loves them so much, therefore he immediately packs up and heads to Bethany. Motivated by love, he does nothing. And I just believe this probably captures what some of us feel as we walk through a difficult season. It's like, okay, God, if it's true that you love me and you understand what I'm going through, then why are you doing nothing? If you love me, why am I still stuck in this situation? If you love me and you know about it, why am I still dealing with this health crisis? If you love me and you know about what's going on, then why aren't you doing anything? Can anybody relate to this? And here's what's even more troubling, is that as Jesus does nothing, Lazarus dies. While Jesus stays where he is, doing nothing, Lazarus breathes his last breath. It's very troubling, right? It's confusing. Why is Jesus doing nothing? The truth is, he is doing something, and he reveals what that is in a conversation with his disciples. So then he told them plainly, Lazarus is dead. Look, guys, we're waiting. You don't know this, but let me just tell you, Lazarus has died while we've stayed here. And for your sake, and I think also for the family's sake, I am glad I was not there. In other words, I am glad I didn't go and heal him. Why? So that you may believe. But now let's go to him. He tells them plainly, look, Lazarus has died, but you know what? I'm glad I didn't go and I'm glad I didn't heal him because I want your faith to grow so that you may believe. You see, what's happening here is this word right here, purpose. You see, the first implication of Jesus being the second Adam is that he is creating purpose in our pain, in our disappointment, and in the tragedies that we experience. If it's true that Jesus is the second Adam and his new world is breaking into the old world of Adam, then we know that this is true because Jesus creates purpose in the midst of our struggle and in the midst of our pain. And now what's challenging about this is we have to admit that there are times when Jesus has a greater purpose than our comfort. And if this is true, we have to admit that there are times where Jesus has a greater purpose even than our happiness, even than our health. Jesus has a greater purpose in this situation that he wants God to be seen more clearly so that these disciples and so that this family may believe more fully. And I believe that's often true for us, that he creates purpose in our seasons of disappointment so that we can see God more clearly and believe in him more fully. Now, I want to share a story with you to help illustrate this point. And this is a story about 2 friends of mine, Christina and Craig. Now, first off, these people look like they belong on a magazine cover, don't they? All I'm saying is someday I'd like to look like Craig. That's really, But Christina and Craig, they attend our Knapp Street campus, and they went through a very difficult season a few years ago. And Christina this week posted on Facebook about their experience. I just want to share it with you. 8 years ago today, Craig lost his job. And Melanie's their oldest daughter. Melanie had just started college, and I remember that we bought her a smartphone the day before, and then we returned it. We canceled our vacation in the fall. We buckled down and cut expenses, circled the wagons, and literally started down the trail to a new sort of life. It was terrifying at the time, but as we look back on it now, we realize it was the best thing that could have happened to us. There have been times in my life that I haven't liked the road I was traveling on, but it always worked out better than even I had prayed it would. So today, 8 years later, I am thankful for a God who never gave up on me, no matter how many times I tried to give up on him, who dreams so much bigger than I could ever imagine. This is the story of Christina and Craig. And what I found fascinating is that this week, Christina and I were talking about this difficult season that they went through. And she told me that when Craig got another job, which was something like over a year before he found another job that fit, she said, when he got a new job, I actually worried that this closeness that I felt with God would go away because I wouldn't have to trust him as much anymore. You see, the truth is, if Jesus has purpose, then I can trust him. Because we can say, God knows what he's doing, God is good, he has a purpose, he has a plan. If that is true, then I can trust him with my life as I walk through this difficult season. And this is all true because Jesus is the second Adam, and his new world is breaking into the old world of Adam. I guess what I'm trying to say is don't be surprised if down the road, a few years from now, you look back on this difficult season that you're walking through right now and you think to yourself, you know what? I'm not sure that I would have the faith that I have today. I'm not sure that I would know God like I do right now if it wasn't for that experience. Also, don't be surprised if down the road, a few years from now, someone in your life says to you, you know what? The way that you walked with God during that season and the way that God showed up in your life, I got to tell you, it helped me grow in my faith. And it helped me see God in a way that I would not have seen him if it wasn't for what you went through. All I'm saying is don't be surprised if God creates purpose in the difficult season that you are walking through. And if he is creating purpose, you can trust him. You can absolutely trust him. So, as we walk through difficult times, Jesus, as the second Adam, is creating purpose. And so maybe you're thinking, well, it sounds like maybe I just need to be a little bit more rational about what I'm experiencing. And maybe I need to take the emotion of it and just kind of, okay, I just need to be more rational. And I'm not so sure that that is true. Let me keep going with this story. What happens is Jesus and his disciples, after waiting a couple days, they show up in Bethany at the village where this family lives. They show up at the house of Martha and Mary and Lazarus, and there's this crowd gathered of friends and family and people from the area who are grieving with the family. They are mourning with the family because Lazarus at this point has now been dead for 4 days. And as Jesus and his disciples arrive, Martha comes out of the house and wants to have a conversation with Jesus. And this is what happens. Lord, Martha said, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. She marches out of the house and says, look, we sent for you. You healed perfect strangers, and yet you did not come and you did not heal my brother who you loved. Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. And you can just feel the bitter disappointment that she's experiencing, the deep disappointment, and almost the accusatory tone if you had been here. Harsh words. How is Jesus going to respond to her? Well, here we go. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. And Martha answered, I know he will rise again in the resurrection of the last day. Jesus gives her some truth about what is coming. Hey, your brother is going to rise again. Yeah, I know. And then he continues. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die, and whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? He says, I am the resurrection. First, he gives her some truth about what is coming. Then he gives her truth about who he is, and he says, do you believe this? And she responds by saying, I believe this. I know that you are the Messiah. Interesting conversation. If you had been here, let me tell you what's true. What is going on here? I believe that this is an experience that many of us have also had. That when we find ourselves in a season of deep disappointment, sadness, or even grief, that someone who cares about us, either literally or figuratively, takes us by the shoulders and says, let me remind you of what is true. God is with you in this season. God has a purpose in this season. Your story is not over yet. God is still writing your story. And they lovingly but firmly tell you the truth that you need to hear. And in that moment, it's what you need. And maybe you've been there, but I think that's what Jesus is doing for Martha. He's giving her the truth, words that she needs to hear. And so they have this conversation. Martha goes back to the house. She finds Mary and says, hey, the teacher is here and he wants to speak with you. And so now Mary goes out to meet Jesus, and this is how their conversation goes. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet. She just crumples and says, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Sound familiar? Same exact words. Lord, if you would have been here, my brother would not have died. Two sisters, one tragedy, same exact words. Jesus gives two totally different responses. Check this out. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. He's deeply moved by this sight. Where have you laid him? Where is he? Where's the body? He asked. Come and see, Lord, they replied. And then Jesus wept. He sees the tears of Mary and the people grieving with her, and he's just deeply moved, and he weeps with them. Two sisters, one tragedy, same exact words, two entirely different responses from Jesus. Why? I believe the answer is that Jesus knew instinctively exactly what each of them needed. That Jesus has the ability to read people and read a situation perfectly every time and respond with care in exactly the way that they need. Martha needed words of truth. She needed to be reminded of truth. And Mary simply needed somebody to be with her, to empathize with her, and cry with her. I love this because Jesus showed up. He brought his presence. He sat with each of them, and he gave them exactly what they needed. And I believe that Jesus does the exact same thing for us. You see, the second implication of Jesus as the second Adam is that he's present. He showed up for these sisters in a very special way, and I believe that he is present with us. If Jesus is the second Adam, and this new world that he's creating is crashing in to the old world of Adam, one of the implications of this is that he is present with us. He is with us in our pain, in our sadness, in our disappointment, even in our grief. And this is important because no one can care for you like Jesus can. because nobody knows you like Jesus does. And you and I, when we try to help somebody in their grief, sometimes we get it right. We say something that seems to work, and sometimes we get it right because we have the ability to sit and empathize. But isn't it true? Sometimes we get it wrong. I mean, I say the wrong things. I do the wrong. Jesus, though, never gets it wrong. He gets it right every time because he knows exactly what we need. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that if Jesus is present with us in our pain, then I can engage him. You and I can and should engage him. Martha and Mary showed up and said, "This is what I'm feeling." And Jesus cared for them so well. And so you and I can and should engage with him because nobody can care for us like Jesus can. Now you may be thinking, okay, Martha was deeply disappointed. Mary was overcome by grief. But understand, I am just so angry. I'm just so angry about what I'm going through and what I'm experiencing. And if you're telling me I should take all that anger and engage God, I'm just not sure that's a good idea. I'm not sure he wants to hear that, and I'm not even sure that it's okay that I do that. I'm just so angry. And if that's where you find yourself, I need you to see something in the conversation Jesus had with Mary. You see, he sees her weeping, and he sees those with her weeping, and then we read this: he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. And these words are so important because literal translation of these words is that Jesus bellowed with anger. It's like he roars out in frustration and anger. Jesus is furious. He is outraged about something or someone. Why is Jesus so angry? Who or what is he angry with? Is he angry with God? Father, if you had done something, then we wouldn't be in this situation. Is that it? I don't think so. I believe that Jesus is furious, like roaring with anger at death itself. He looks at this situation where the people that he loves are grieving, that his friend is in the grave, and he is furious about it. He's angry that death is even a reality in his creation. I think he's saying, this was not part of my design. There was never supposed to be tears. There were never supposed to be grieving. There was never supposed to be death in the first place. And he's furious that this is even happening. He is furious at the effects of the old world of Adam. And I just bring this up to say this. If you're angry, I believe it's possible that Jesus is more angry than you are. And what if Jesus hates what you're going through more than you do? And if Jesus is present with us in our pain, I believe we can and we should engage him because he understands, he cares, he knows, and nobody can care for your heart and your soul like Jesus can. Now, there's one more challenge with this conversation about the presence of Jesus. And that is when we find ourselves in seasons of disappointment and sadness, and especially grief, we walk into a room or we walk into church and we see people laughing, we see people talking, and we just go, you know what? They don't understand what I'm going through, and I shouldn't be here. We have this tendency to step back. We have this tendency to disengage from community because nobody understands what we're feeling. But I would plead with you and challenge you not to do this. This is a season to step forward into community and to engage with God's people. And to help us understand what I mean and why this is important, I want to return to an image that we've already talked about in our announcement time this morning. The row, the circle, and the chair. Here's what I mean. During seasons of sadness and grief is not the time to disengage from the row. Why? because this is the environment where we are shoulder to shoulder with other followers of Jesus, like we are this morning, where we have the opportunity to worship God, and where through the teaching of Scripture, we are reminded that God is good, that he has a purpose, that he is with us, that he can be trusted, and we need to engage with that truth. In the circle, this is our word for small groups or community, when followers of Jesus group together and journey through life together. This is the environment that I most often experience the kindness and care of God when I'm struggling. Because isn't it interesting that often God uses his people to express his care? And that the people in my circle at times will take me by the shoulders and say, let me remind you of what is true. And these are the people that will cry with us, that will sit with us and weep with us. Sometimes God expresses his care through his people. And so I would plead with you, don't disengage, but press in and engage. When you are hurting is the season to step into community. And then, of course, the chair. This is the opportunity, one-on-one with God, to tell him what's in your heart. And I believe that it is perfectly okay to say, God, I don't like this. I don't understand this. I wish I wasn't in this place. And I also don't understand what you're doing or where you are. I believe God can handle it. I believe God welcomes our honesty. And this is the environment where God can speak to us through his scriptures, care for us, give us the truth. I guess what I'm trying to say is that when we are in seasons of difficulty, the temptation is to step back because people don't get it. But I would plead with you to engage God and also engage God's community, because he is present and he can care for you like nobody else can. And so this story where Jesus shows up, he is present, he cares for them so well. And then someone from the crowd speaks up. Check this out. Then the Jews, as the group gathered together, said, see how he loved him. Look at Jesus weeping. See how he loved this man. And then somebody else says, well, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? And there it is again. Look, if he loved him so much, why didn't he do something about it? And for us, if he loves me, why am I still in the, why isn't he doing something? Why isn't he fixing this? And so what happens next is that Jesus and this crowd and the sisters, they show up at the tomb of Lazarus. And you know, it's a cave hollowed out with a stone over the entrance. And Jesus says, roll the stone away. And Martha's like, that's not a good idea. Because he's been dead for 4 days and it's gonna be disgusting. And Jesus says, trust me, roll the stone away. And so they roll the stone away, and Jesus, in a loud voice, says, Lazarus, come out. And this dead man awakens, sits up, walks out. He is back to life. And then something I think is humorous happens. Jesus has to tell the crowd, hey, help the man out of his grave clothes, because they're stunned. I mean, what would you do if you just saw a man come back to life? I'd be, he's like, somebody help him out. Jesus raises his friend back to life. Yeah, if he cared so much, then why doesn't he do something? Well, he just did. And what does this reveal to us about the new Adam? Third implication, power. Jesus, as the second Adam, as the new Adam, has power over death. He raised Lazarus out of the grave. Amazing story, so cool for Martha, Mary, and Lazarus and their incomplete story, right? But what does this have to do with our incomplete stories? Well, here's the thing. Every miracle that is recorded in John's gospel, every miracle is a glimpse into what it's gonna be like in the new world that Jesus is creating, the new world that is breaking into the old world of Adam. And so when Jesus heals a blind man, it gives us this picture that in the new world that Jesus is creating, there will be no blindness. And then when Jesus heals a sick boy, it points forward to in the new world of Jesus, there will not even be sickness. And when Jesus turns water into wine, it gives us this picture, and don't think about this too much if you come from like a Baptist old school background. No, it gives us this picture that in the new creation, the new world of Jesus, the celebration, the joy will never end. And when Jesus, he brings Lazarus out of the grave, he resurrects him, it gives us this glimpse, it gives us a foreshadowing that in the new world of Jesus, all who are loved by Jesus will be raised back to life. All who belong to Jesus will be resurrected. You and I, if we belong to Jesus, will receive new bodies when Jesus' new world comes in fully. You see, right now we are living in this tension of what theologians call the already, but the not yet. The new world of Jesus is breaking in. We see it in this story, we experience it in our lives, but not fully. But when it comes in fully, when Jesus returns to this earth, you and I will be resurrected. Every believer ever will be resurrected, and we will live forever with each other and with God, and it's gonna be amazing. As the kids say, it's gonna be dope. Let me show you what this is gonna be like, because John, who wrote this story, the story of Lazarus and Martha and Mary, he also wrote another book in the Bible called the Book of Revelation. And in this book, which he wrote much later in life, he received a vision from God of what the new world of Jesus would be like. And this is what he gives us. He says, look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and he will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them and will be there, and he will be their God. It's like the new world of Jesus is breaking in, but when it comes fully, Jesus will live on a new and perfected earth. We will be with him forever. And John continues, this is what it's gonna be like. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. No more crying. There will be no more death, no mourning, no crying, no pain, for the old order of things has passed away. Look, the old order of the old world of Adam gone, passed away. No more tears, no more mourning, no more death. And then we get another picture in Revelation 22, the very next chapter, and he gives us this vivid imagery. And it's so fascinating because in the book of Genesis, it all starts in a garden. And then in Revelation 22, we get this picture of a garden. And in that garden, the angel showed me the river of the water of life. And notice there's all kinds of imagery about life. The river of the water of life, it is as clear as crystal. A little bit more. On each side of this river of life stood the tree of life. It's like river of life, tree of life. And this tree bearing 12 crops of fruit, yielding fruit every month. It's like so much life is coming out of this. That's the imagery that we get. And the leaves of the trees are for the healing of the nations. No more war, no more disagreement. Harmony has been restored. No longer will there be any curse. All the effects of old Adam's world gone as the new world of Jesus comes in. And so what I'm trying to say is that if Jesus has power over death, then I have hope, and you have hope. Because I don't care what you're going through, there is something in the future for us that is beyond our wildest imaginations, where all will be restored, where our bodies will work like they should, where there will be no more death and no mourning, none of that. This is the hope that we have because Jesus is the second Adam. And so let's wrap up our time where we began. This picture, I love these people. but when I see it, it's incomplete. My sister is missing. And I don't know what incomplete picture you have, but what I do know is that Jesus is the second Adam, and that he is creating purpose in our pain, in our disappointment, in our grief. And if that is true, we can trust him. And I do know that Jesus, the second Adam, is present with us in our pain. And if that is true, then you and I can and we should engage him, because he can care for our hearts like no one else can. And Jesus is the second Adam. He has power over death. He has defeated death. And because of this, you and I have hope, unbelievable hope in Christ. And what I know about that new world that Jesus is creating is that there will never again be an incomplete picture. And so I'd love to wrap up by praying for you. And after I'm done praying, our campus pastors and room hosts will share a few words as well. God, you gave us your son, Jesus. And there are just so many aspects to Jesus that are amazing. And this morning, we've just been exploring this role of second Adam or new Adam. And God, let me just say, I'm so grateful. As I look forward to what you're going to do for us and the forever that you have planned for us, God, I'm so grateful. God, it fills me with hope. And God, I think of those who are traveling through a difficult season. God, may you meet them. May you be present with them. May they feel your love and care. May those of us who are with those people be your hands and feet and share your love with them this week. And God, we're just so grateful for who you are and how you love us and the promises that you have given us. And we just pray all this in the name of your son, Jesus. Amen.